in a world full of negative people. Hey man, I'm just trying to be a positive guy, a positive farmer, a positive outfitter. This is a Shark Farmer podcast with your host, Rob Sharkey. Whatever.
And welcome again to Shark Farmer Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Rob Sharkey, and today we're going to go out to Nebraska. Apparently, a road that led us to Nebraska. Today we're going to talk to Andrew Rodriguez. How you doing, Andrew?
Good. How are you, Sharky?
I'm doing pretty good. How's life in Nebraska?
Oh, besides all the rain that we're getting here in the last day or so, everything pretty good. Good Christmas. Looking forward to New Year.
I suppose Nebraska is going to be very happy if there is less rain in 2020.
Right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but hopefully we can only pray and hope for the best.
Well, your interesting story. I can't wait to get into it. But first, Andrew, we need to roll into the ad because I need to pay for those Christmas presents. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean.
Now, originally, you're from New York, right?
I am.
Okay. Manhattan. All right. There is a guy from New York. His name is Samuel Goldberg, and he has done a movie called Silo the Movie, and it's about grain entrapments. So before you moved out to Nebraska, you were living in New York. Would you had any idea what grain entrapments are?
No, not one bit. Know what a farm was until I moved out to Nebraska.
That's the thing. I mean, you're from New York. You don't understand it. Just like I don't understand what's going on in New York. I don't expect people from New York to necessarily understand the ins and out of what's going on out here. But here's a guy that heard about these grain entrapments, and it bothered him so much, he decided to go ahead and make a whole movie about it. It's an independent film. It's called Silo the Film. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I never had. Where do you find that at?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Andrew. You can't go to the AMC or the rave or all that because, you know, Hollywood, right? They own everything, right, and they want to push out the little guy. You know what I'm saying? So he's done. Of course. Yes, he's done an independent film. So you can arrange a screening, and it's kind of cool because, like, for the price of what you would pay a speaker to come into a meeting, you can arrange the screening. So, like, the meetings for, like, the seed meetings, the customer appreciation meetings, the Farm Bureau meetings, the bank meetings, all that stuff. Instead of having that really boring speaker all the time, you could actually show this movie.
That's a great idea, actually. How long is it?
It's 75 minutes. So it's not a long movie. So it's not like a big, a 2-hour thing. But you can be honest here. When I say independent film, what do you think?
A low budget film.
Yes, I did too. I thought low budget. I thought low acting. But I will tell you, this thing was fantastic. And the people that he got, he must have friends. You know what I'm saying? Because the people that he got were like actors from like Game of Thrones and House of Cards.
Oh,
and
really?
Yeah, I mean, they were throwing out like the stuff they've been on. I'm like, oh yeah, you're that guy. You're that guy that was the really bad guy in House of Cards.
So I'm going to have to look into it.
Yes. Oh, you can go to silothefilm.com and look into it, Andrew. They do a very good job as far as like Hollywood's concerned of understanding agriculture and being realistic in the plot. It's done really, really well. And I think to have a movie done from a guy from New York about grain entrapment is something that agriculture should support.
Maybe that's my next step in my career, is building a movie like that.
You've got the looks, man. You could be an actor. You kind of look like you look like The Rock with hair.
I'm definitely not as lean as The Rock is. He's a little bit more muscular than I am. I'm just a big teddy bear, though.
It's camera angles.
It's all about the angle.
Yes, I guarantee you're more ripped than The Rock, but you know the way the Hollywood does it with the camera angles. You could look like The Rock if you had the same people taking pictures of you. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
You're probably about how big are you?
I'm 6'6", around 340.
That's probably about the same height as him, right?
He's about 6'4", 6'5". I'm a little bit taller than him.
See, you could totally take over. The sequel of the Tooth Fairy movie could totally have you in it.
That's a possibility. We'll see.
Well, I'll give him your number, and maybe you guys can make some movie magic. But go to silothefilm.com. Believe me, you won't regret it. All right, Andrew, Let's just start from the beginning, right? Because you've got a very, very interesting story. So give us some background of where you grew up. Tell us about little Andrew, if you were ever little.
I was never little. So when I was 5 years old, I was 105 pounds. So that puts into perspective how big I was.
5? Okay,
as a
well,
kid.
whoa. I'm trying to remember. Oh my gosh, you were a giant kid.
Yeah, I was never small by any means. But yeah, I grew up in New York, Harlem, Spanish Harlem. My mom raised me. I want to preface typical low income Latino or Black family. Either you're growing up without a dad or you have a lot of other issues. My mom was not in the greatest circumstances. So grew up there until I was about 13 years old. And then my older brother, had married a native Nebraskan when we were going out to college there in New York. They moved out to Nebraska to help her parents had gotten sick. And when they married, he decided to stay out here. And I wasn't doing the best things out there. So he decided to bring me in. So at 13, I moved out to Nebraska.
Okay.
And
Whoa. As far as Nebraska was foreign for you, Spanish Harlem is foreign for me. What was it like growing up there?
it was a grind. My family doesn't really come from much. My mom didn't really have a job of any sort. We were on welfare. I mean, where we lived, it was just like a wheel of chaos, really. My mom she was a heroin addict for 40 years. So, like I said, preface, it wasn't anything towards her. There's no resentment or anything, but she did the best that she can to raise me. The lifestyle that we lived, we didn't really live that New York City lifestyle where you see all the fancy buildings, brownstone houses, and Times Square. That's not like what we lived. It was more like the ghetto, if that makes sense. Bodegas and grocery stores on every corner. That was our environment.
I know that you're pretty, I will say, humble. You aren't expecting much, but I grew up I'm a really good mom and dad, a really good family environment. And I look back and in my mind, I had a tough childhood just because, I don't know, whatever. I didn't get the right shoes on Christmas or whatever. You were a whole different universe with this. When I hear someone that grew up in those kind of circumstances, first of all, I realized how unbelievably well I did have it. And second of all, I wonder how somebody survives that, because growing up is hard enough, let alone not having the support pillar of the mom and the dad or whoever, and at least having that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's tough. But then again, my mom is a very strong woman. Aside from her addiction, she made it her best to give us the best life that we can possibly get. But it was just a point in time where, my brother was in a better situation. She said, hey, it might be better. So I have a younger brother as well. So my younger brother went to Utah and I went to Nebraska. My brother went to Utah because my sister moved to Utah. So it was just better. She just said, well, we can have a better opportunity in life, and that's with your brother. And my brother was able to provide that for me, along with my sister-in-law. And I'm just blessed, man. I'm blessed. But I don't want to take anything away from my family and my mom, because she did everything that she can to put food on the table and then to give me life.
I've interviewed a few people that have had parents with addiction. You are no different than the other two. They don't blame the parent. They blame the addiction. So seeing it and growing up with it firsthand, I mean, can you explain to us that don't really understand it, don't see it? Would you say this is like any other disease?
Oh, absolutely. It might be worse just because it's truly an addiction. And some people handle it in many different ways. Some people just absolutely lose everything. I mean, it's just the life that you're given. It's the choices that you make. And her background is not very pleasant either, and she didn't have a really good childhood growing up. She had to raise her brothers and sisters. So, it's that will that we're talking about. And the sad thing is I'm like one out of so many other people that are living this life on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one. The addiction is terrible, but that's with any type of addiction. It's a trap. She was just trapped for 40 years, and there's nothing you can really do about it unless you give yourself up to a better choice, and in our opinion, Jesus Christ and the Lord and Savior.
And I remember one of the other interviews, because it was like one of my first interviews, and I didn't understand it. And I'm kind of like trying to get into the fact that it was a bad parent or whatever. And she's like, no, you don't understand. My parents weren't bad. In her case, both the parents were addicts. You wouldn't be thinking the same, like if I said if I was raised by two people that were terminally ill. And that's the way she looked at it.
Right. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
She was just sick. Whether it might have been mental or it's just a disease like anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So your brother goes out to Nebraska from New York, marries a Nebraska girl, which, I mean, that would be a story in itself. But the decision is made that you're going to go out and live with them.
The decision was made. I was moving around. I ended up in Philly with my oldest brother, who also didn't have the best circumstances. And my brother was like, you know what? There's nothing else that we can do. This is the best option that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the story is not my story. It's really my brother's story. Just because he gave me the opportunity to live a different life. Married this girl, and we couldn't ask for a better family that he married into.
Mm-hmm.
Small town folk, own a lumberyard here in town, good, hardworking people. And they taught me good morals and values, and just blessed.
How old were you when you moved out there?
I was 13 years old.
13. All right. I mean, looking back, were you just kind of shell-shocked, or were you a punk living there? What kind of kid were you when you moved out there?
I was very homesick for about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I was always, I'm a mama's boy. I was with her all the time, and, not being with her at all, it was just a complete shock to me. On top of that, the culture is completely different here. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to New York, but everyone is very arrogant to themselves. And then I went to Nebraska. The first day I got here, we're driving from Omaha, Nebraska. And we're heading west to Aurora, and you see people waving at you in their car. I didn't know what was going on at that point. People were very, very nice and genuine here in the state. And it took a while to get adjusted just because I was very blunt.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a little, I guess you would call a little hood in me. I just didn't really care what anyone thought. And so my brother had to teach me, this is a different way of life. You have to adapt to it. You can build a good reputation here. And it took a little bit, but after some time, it took me about a year to adjust and get acclimated with everything and figure out the culture here.
How did that work? Because you move out with your brother, and now you're in a role as a son, and he's in a role of a dad. How long before that relationship kind of got figured out?
I mean, it's still not figured out because that's a tough position to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, you're 25 years old, and you decide to adopt a 13-year-old, essentially,
mm-hmm.
and raise him and try to break his old habits. But that saying, reflection, when you're an adult, you reflect on things that your parents taught you. And I tend to reflect on a lot that my brother taught me. It goes to show they tried their best, and they did their best, and they did a phenomenal job at raising me. My sister-in-law, great mother, and they also had 3 kids too. So I'm basically in their family with their 3 kids, and they learn how to raise a teenager by themselves for the first time. we're always going to have that weird relationship because I almost consider him as a dad than I do a brother.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll ever be a normal relationship, you know.
Well, that's not all
Just
bad.
I don't think it's bad at all.
No. 13 years old for a boy is a confusing time, let alone being 13 and having to move away from your mother and then go to a completely different environment. I'm trying to picture you going from the schools in New York to your first day in the school in Nebraska.
It was a weird experience. I came in with a LeBron James jumpsuit, probably 3 sizes too big, with some Air Force Ones, curly nappy hair. Everyone thought I was someone's mom walking into the school. So it was a weird adjustment, and I had a lot of behavior issues. I was bullied a lot when I was younger, so I didn't really take any crap from anyone when I kind of got to that 12, 13-year-old phase. So coming from a really, JFK in New York, it's a school for basically behavior. Coming from there to Aurora, Nebraska, Class B, a town of 4,000 people, I was standing out right from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just that acclimation, and my brother teaching me like, hey, this is a different lifestyle. You have to keep yourself in check, and you have to do the right things. It was a completely different challenge, but it worked out for the best.
All right, I'm going to make an assumption here. All I know is your picture. All I know is your last name. So are you Hispanic?
Yeah, I'm Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. Okay. What was the school that you went into?
In Aurora?
In Nebraska.
Just Aurora.
I mean, what was the makeup of the races in the school that you went into in Nebraska?
Predominantly Caucasian, yeah. White. Everyone was pretty much white there.
I would have been intimidated walking in.
I'm sure. There's a lot of kids that were intimidated. Again, because of the community, I latched on to, 4 or 5. It could have easily went the other way around. I could have latched on to kids that were not doing so good in school, but yeah. I just was blessed with friends that latched on to good kids, and they taught me the way too. Just a blessing all around.
Let's see, at 13, did you walk in and did they hand you a basketball?
Yeah, pretty much. And they all circled me, stepped back and circled around me, seeing if I can dribble, and they were just fascinated. It's like you go to the zoo and you're out and you're looking at a gorilla through the glass. It's the same thing. They were just fascinated with how big I was, and it was a weird experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, 13 it's just such an odd age when everything's changing. And all you want to do is, all I wanted to do was be accepted. I never wanted to be different because then you would be made fun of and all this stuff. Right. I cannot imagine you walking into that school on that first day and just how you would have felt.
It was weird because you're at that age too, exactly like you said, you want to impress people too. Mm-hmm. You want to do things that make you seem cool, right? Mm-hmm. So I was trying to seem cool, and I was also able to find those kids, farm kids, kids that have great parents. I was able to just latch on to those guys. They taught me and kept me on the straight and narrow.
That's fantastic. Let's fast forward. So I'm assuming you got in high school and someone handed you a football.
Yeah, so my head coach, Randy Hubert, he just saw that I was bigger than the normal kid. And I just had, not to be boastful, but I just looked athletic compared to a normal. At that time, of 8th grader, I was probably 6'5", 275. I was always a bigger kid, so he latched onto that, and he was that second father figure. Mm-hmm. He was actually probably the father figure I've never had. He always taught me, and he always coached me, and he was willing to take me to a camp in Texas and drive his own vehicle and take me to Texas to show colleges, what type of player I was.
Really?
Yeah, he did everything. Him and his family did everything for my family and I, and they just supported us 100%. And that's the reason really why I started getting looked at, was because of him and his effort to take me to that camp and to coach me, you know.
That's really cool. You don't hear that all the time. I'm thinking back to my high school coach, and he was kind of a dick. You know what I'm saying?
You get some of those.
Yeah. All right. So at this time, I mean, you're going through high school, you're playing football. We're going to get into the point where, you're looking at agriculture. Can you think of any time during this where those seeds were being planted that you started becoming interested in ag?
Not at all. I was never interested in ag. Never.
Okay.
I mean, some of my best friends, the peers, they're farmers. I would help him haul pipe in middle school and in high school a little bit. But besides that, I was really not thinking anything of it more than, hauling pipe.
Gotcha.
So this was later on in life. This is actually after college where the opportunity came up.
Well, let's not skip over college. Where did you go to college and what did you do?
So I went to college at UNL, first and foremost to play football. And then after that to go to school. Coach Bo always said, hey, we're here for one thing, and that's to play football. And school comes after that. It's a Division I college. We're Division I athletes. So that was my whole purpose of going. When I was a freshman, I had a lot of passion for football, freshman, sophomore year. So that was my whole goal, was to go to the NFL.
Sure.
That's the biggest opportunity that anyone could have. So I was just attacking that. The passion that I truly have, I would say, is working with kids. So I wanted to be a school counselor at the time. So I got my degree in history, and I never went back to get my master's for counseling, but I guess that's a whole different other story.
Did you play 4 years?
Yep, played 4 years, so 10 to 14, and got my degree in 4 years and played in 4 years. Didn't redshirt, so went in as a freshman and got the opportunity to play a little bit. And it was all under Coach Pelini, too, as well. He was my coach for 4 years.
Then after the 4 years were over, we're not in the NFL.
Correct. I decided not to pursue the NFL at all.
I absolutely know nothing about this besides what I see on movies, but I mean, you have to go to such a level just for a chance, a very slim chance of getting up to the next level. I mean, what was the decision that you were like, all right, we're just going to play college, get my degree, and not worry about the next step?
It was a decision that I made personally. My brother was not very happy with me when I made that decision. My family, they were just disappointed that I decided not to go. I had an agent. So Danny Woodhead's agent, Jeremiah Searles, is a good buddy of mine. He's in the NFL right now. Same agent that we had. My heart wasn't in it. I actually dreaded just thinking about the fact of playing. I just got so burnt out in college. I just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. I had an agent. I called them 2 days before the draft. Not that I'm saying I would have got picked up, maybe 7th round, but most likely for agency. I just told them, hey, I appreciate all the work that you put in for me, but this is not something I want to pursue. Didn't know what I wanted to pursue at the time, and I just knew in my heart that that wasn't it. So my brother, he's a FedEx contractor, so he owns FedEx routes, and he has employees, and he's an entrepreneur of sorts. So I worked with him for about 6 months, and then pharmaceutical opportunity came in from a good buddy of mine. So that was my primary, I guess, first career job, was being in the pharmaceutical industry.
Were you selling, like the guy goes around to the doctor's office and sells stuff?
Exactly. So I was selling like my Stolic, which is for hypertension, selling a couple of poop medications to help you poop and to help you stop pooping.
Hey.
And I just go to doctors and sell the medication.
I've got a friend that does that, and she makes a fantastic living. It's not a bad gig.
It's not bad at all. Now, depending on the location that you're in, like for Nebraska, the territory is pretty large. So I was traveling quite a bit, overnighting quite a bit. It got to be a hassle for my family. So from there, I was looking at something local, and the hiring manager for Syngenta had contacted me. And from there, I hit it off with my manager now, Matt Dolch, who's a fantastic guy, fantastic manager. That's how I ended up here in the ag industry.
What are you doing now?
So I'm a feed salesman.
All right, so corn and soybeans.
Yeah.
Try to put my head around this, though, because you went through a lot of things in your life where you did. None of them were involving corn and soybeans. So what kind of...
No, not at all.
What kind of learning curve was this?
It was a huge learning curve. I tell people right off the bat, I'm guessing my manager didn't hire me for my agronomy background. Nebraska is a big football state, right? I know quite a bit of farmers around my area, but a farmer, they're in their shop and they see a 6'6" brown dude, about 350 pounds. The first question that they're most likely going to ask is, did you play a sport? I'm really a relationship guy. So, I mean, I hit it off well that way.
Yeah.
And from there, I'm still learning every day.
Mm-hmm.
From agronomically, from environmental, from applications. It was a huge learning curve for me. But I couldn't ask for a better group of guys to get me there, though. They are always willing to help me.
I don't think it's a bad idea for Syngenta to maybe look outside the box of people that are going to work inside of corn and soybeans. Because like you said, it's the same white dude in a white pickup truck, right? I mean, at least you're going to get attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to diversify it. How many minorities do you see selling seed or chemical? Probably not many.
It's agriculture. We still call women minorities.
That is true. But you really don't see them.
No, you don't. I'm sitting there thinking I can think of one.
And that's exactly my point. And, my manager did a great job of looking at that perspective and telling a different story because, I mean, Syngenta is different even compared to 5 years ago. The managers up at the top, GW4, Eric Frywald, Quinn Showalter, those are guys from bigger brands like you're talking about, Pioneer, DeKalb, Bear. So the story that it all aligns with kind of my story and kind of Nebraska's story. For example, the new coach that we had, Scott Frost, what he's trying to do with Nebraska is bring them back up to the top. It's the same what MK is trying to do with their brand as well. Matt Dolch, my manager, sees fit that, hey, we diversify the culture. Maybe we can make some progress with it too.
Yeah, maybe I should have mentioned to you that they haven't sponsored my podcast yet, but they're getting an awful damn good commercial here, aren't they, Andrew?
Maybe I should look into that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, first you got to plant some MK first. That's the first thing.
I do.
Hey,
yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I do. What happens when the rubber meets the road, though? Or when you go out and you meet these farmers, how's that going?
It goes well because I'm not going to bullshit them. That's the first thing. I'm candid straight off the bat. Hey, I'm an idiot, but I know people that are way smarter than me and that are actually experts in this. Can we maybe grab dinner and we can bring along, whether it may be talking about Enogen or whatever it may be, or chemical or something that that's not really my strong suit, I will get the right answer for them. So they appreciate the respect that, hey, I'm coming in candid, coming in with straight honesty, that what you're going to get out of me is the hard work, and we can build from there. And
you're doing it all wrong. All wrong. Point to a number in the book and say that one does 2.5 bushel better than the competitors. That's all you need to do.
That's not my forte, though. I like to be honest with people, and the first salesman that tells you that their brand is the only brand is full of crap, because every brand has great hybrids, great varieties.
Are you having fun learning this stuff?
Absolutely. Especially in the summertime when I'm out with those guys, we're checking plots, we're checking fields, we're grabbing dinner, but most importantly, at the end of the day, a farmer wants to have a beer. That's where, because the biggest difference from pharmaceuticals to seed sales, there's a really big emotional attachment to seed. I mean, it's your livelihood, right? What you plant is everything revolves around that, right? So it's a different sell. It's more of a relationship. And I love building relationships, and I love having fun with guys, and it's fun to me, depending on the season. Like right now, when we're getting all this rain,
mm-hmm.
and you can't really do much outside, it's not as fun to me. But yeah, when we're outside majority of the time, it's a blast.
Here's how I view seed salesmen, right? When I first started farming, I did all the plots, compared everything, and I had the numbers that I wanted, and then I went to find out where I could find them the cheapest. That's how I did it. Over the years,
right.
I found out I couldn't keep up, because once you find the plots, then you have to find out the story behind the plots and the story behind that.
Yep.
Because, I mean, they're all skewed. I mean, come on, I've put in plots. I understand that you aren't going to put a number one number against their a number one number. I get it. All farmers get it. So I rely on my dealer to pick out the best varieties. I'm like, all right, we're going to give you this many bags of seed. I want you to pick out the best varieties. And it's up to them to know my ground, know the fertility, know everything about that by asking me and knowing my stuff and having the experience of it, or at least they know who to ask to find out that information. That's what I want from my seed salesman.
You're exactly right. But in order for them to do that, what's one thing that you have to have with them?
Probably credit.
Credit and trust. That's the most important thing, though. You have to trust the person that you're relying on to have that.
Has that ever been an issue with you? Because, I mean, you're fairly inexperienced with, I mean, you did not grow up in the corn plots like some of these guys you're competing up against. Is that trust ever been an issue for you?
So the first thing is I build trust with the retailer. You know, MK is more of a retailer brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I build trust with like the Aurora Co-ops and the Northern Supplies out here in Nebraska. And if they want me to go on their farm with them, then that's great. But no, as long as you're honest with them, you're telling them, hey, I'm new at this, but we'll get you the right answer. That's what most people expect.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
That's really all it's about.
What is the name of the worst customer that you have?
I can't give you any names. I don't really have any bad customers.
I mean, before the podcast, you were saying it was some Ermacher guy.
He's a hard one to deal with.
You damn right.
No, he's a phenomenal guy.
I want to ask you a question selfishly here. We've heard your background. Right. Sorely different from 99% of everybody that's in agriculture right now.
I would say 100%.
I was trying to, you never know, Andrew. There might be someone playing at some other university, whatever. What would you like agriculture to know about living in New York or growing up in New York or people in New York?
I would like them to know that we need to have a little bit more reach and frequency out there on the East Coast in general, hell, even on the West Coast, because there's a lot of negative stigmatism that comes with farming, especially with some of the chemical that we use. I mean, for goodness sake, I didn't know what a corn hybrid was when I moved to Nebraska.
Yeah.
I didn't know that farming existed. So if we can have just a little bit more knowledge to some of these folk that don't have the access to it. I mean, everyone has the access to it, but we just need to have a little bit better approach at giving it to them and showing them like, hey, this is how we do things out here. And it's not just for this state, it's for our entire nation. You know, if they have that perspective, we can have it out there so that they can be more open-minded. I think that's what we need.
You think, air quotes, city folk want to know?
I think some of them do. And I think that's where it starts. I can carry the torch by myself, but if I can get 2 or 3 to carry the torch with me, we can start making movement, right? So if there's even a minute, say 5% of the population want to know, we can start there. And then hopefully in 5 years, maybe 15 or 20% have a better idea of what agriculture is all about. But I think it's just continuing to voice your thoughts, how we run our farms and how we do everything from an agriculture standpoint. It's just sharing our opinions and sharing our voices with those that want to hear, and then just grow it from there.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. All right, let me turn the tables a little bit. What do you think people in New York should know about farmers?
That most of them are the hardest workers in the room. Not only to provide for their families, but provide for America. And I really want everyone to know that farmers are not doing anything to harm the environment. They're just trying to raise a crop for the world to use and to be of value to the U.S. And I think that perspective is key. City folk need to understand that it's not just these big farmers that are just trying to get away and make a ton of money. It's really trying to help our communities.
Yeah. Again, very well said. You're good at these kind of questions.
Appreciate it.
All right, Andrew, where can people find you on social media?
So I primarily use Twitter. You can look up my handle. It's ARod6378. For my Twitter, that's for my Instagram as well.
Very, very cool. I like the story. It makes you realize, a person like me, what a normal and good childhood I had, and how probably whiny I was about it. You had some tough blows in life. You never look for an excuse to fall back on that. You've done a ton of successful things in your life, and I like where you're going, and I like that agriculture now has you on our side.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to find a better industry to be a part of.
Are we going to arm wrestle if we see each other?
I mean, if you want, I'll stop by on my way through.
It's very good. You'll let me win, won't you? Come on. I'd buy a seat if you did.
I'll give you one or two.
Or Andrew Rodriguez, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us open and honestly in agriculture about things we just don't know. I wish we could get more of this. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Hey, I appreciate your time, Rob. It was a pleasure.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much. And everybody else, we hope you catch us next week.
And thank you for listening to the Shark Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Rob Sharkey. Please visit us at www.sharkyfarms.com. And just search for Shark Farmer to follow me on Twitter. Later.